Looking at the provided documents, I'll write chapters 1-3 following the detailed outline, using insights from Chu D. DocX about the target audience and Mao Keach Ban.docx structure. From Ten Ngoy Mai TXT, I'm using Margaret Wilson as the main character. On my son's wedding day, I thought I'd finally be honored. Instead, I became invisible. My name is Margaret Wilson, and for 67 years, I believed that love given would eventually be love returned. I was wrong. But let me start from the beginning, because every ending has its roots in what came before. 43 years ago, I held my newborn son David in my arms at Cincinnati General Hospital. The nurses had gone home, the visiting hours were over, and it was just me and this tiny human who would become my entire world. His father had already left, not just the hospital room, but our lives entirely. He said he wasn't ready for the responsibility, so it became just us. I was 24 years old, working double shifts at the diner on Vine Street during the day and cleaning offices downtown at night. David would sleep in his carrier beside my desk while I emptied trash cans and mopped floors. The security guard, an older black man named Henry, used to bring him crackers and make funny faces to keep him quiet. "That boy's gonna be something special," Henry would say. "Look how he watches everything with those big eyes." I believed him. I had to. When David was 3, he got pneumonia. For 2 weeks, I didn't sleep. I'd sit by his hospital bed, holding his little hand, watching the rise and fall of his chest. The medical bills came to more than I made in 6 months, but I didn't care. I picked up a third job on weekends, cleaning houses in the suburbs. My hands were raw from bleach, my back ached constantly, but David got better. That was all that mattered. The years blurred together in a rhythm of sacrifice that felt as natural as breathing. When David wanted to play Little League, I sold my grandmother's pearl necklace to pay for equipment and fees. When he needed tutoring in math, I gave up my one small luxury, the monthly dinner out with my friend Susan from work, to afford it. When he dreamed of going to college, I took out a second mortgage on the little house I'd finally managed to buy. I never told him about these sacrifices. What was the point? This is what mothers do. We give everything and ask for nothing in return, except maybe someday to know that our children remember us with love. David graduated summa cum laude from Ohio State. I was so proud I cried through the entire ceremony. He got a job at a prestigious law firm in Columbus, bought a beautiful condo, and started dating Sarah, a doctor's daughter with perfect blonde hair and a trust fund. I liked Sarah well enough, though she had a way of looking at my small house and secondhand furniture with barely concealed pity. "Mom, you should really update this place," David would say during his infrequent visits. "Sarah and I could help you hire a decorator." I'd smile and change the subject. The house was perfect the way it was. Every worn spot on the sofa, every faded photograph on the mantel, every chip in the kitchen table. They all told the story of a life well lived, a child well raised. 3 months ago, David called to tell me he was getting married. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, meaning it. "When?" "October 15th. It'll be a small ceremony, just family and close friends. About 150 people. 150 people seemed like a lot for small, but I kept that thought to myself. "I can't wait to help plan it," I said. "We could look at flowers together, maybe taste test some cakes." There was a pause. "Actually, Mom, Sarah's mother has that all handled. She's really good at event planning, but we'd love for you to be there, of course." Of course. How generous of them to want me at my own son's wedding. The invitation arrived 2 weeks later on thick, cream-colored paper that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Mrs. Charles Bradford and Mrs. Margaret Wilson request the pleasure of your company. Sarah's mother got top billing, even though she was paying for exactly none of it. The money for David's education, his first car, his security deposit when he moved out, all of that had come from me. But apparently, having money in the present counted more than having sacrificed everything in the past. I bought a new dress for the wedding, navy blue with tiny pearl buttons, nothing flashy. I had my hair done at the salon downtown, where Rosa had been cutting it for 15 years. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Wilson," she said, spraying it into place. "Your son is lucky to have you." I believed her. I really believed her. The wedding was held at the Grandview Country Club, the kind of place where valets park your car and every fork has its designated purpose. I'd driven by it countless times over the years, but never imagined I'd be inside as a guest. The main ballroom overlooked a golf course so green it looked artificial, and everything was decorated in white and gold with roses that must have cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. I arrived exactly on time, wearing my new dress and carrying a small gift bag containing the silver picture frame I'd found at an antique shop. It had belonged to a young couple in the 1940s, and something about its delicate etching reminded me of David when he was little, always asking me to tell him stories about people in old photographs. The problem started immediately. "Name?" asked the young woman at the guest book table. She was blonde like Sarah, wearing a bridesmaid's dress and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Margaret Wilson." She scanned her list, frowning. "Wilson! Wilson! I don't see a Margaret Wilson here." My stomach dropped. "I'm David's mother." "Oh." Her laugh was bright and fake. "You're Margaret. We have you listed as mother of the groom, right here at table 12. Table 12. I glanced around the room, counting. The family tables were clearly 1 through 6, close to the head table where David and Sarah would sit. Tables 7 through 10 seemed to be for college friends and work colleagues. Table 12 was in the back corner, partially hidden behind a pillar next to the service entrance, where waiters hustled back and forth with empty plates. I made my way to table 12 and found my place card. Mother of the groom, in elegant script. No name, just a title, like I was a role rather than a person. The other seats at the table were filled with people I didn't recognize. Distant relatives of Sarah's family, an elderly couple who seemed confused about why they were there, and a woman who spent the entire cocktail hour talking loudly about her recent hip replacement surgery. From my seat, I could barely see the head table. David looked handsome in his black tuxedo, laughing at something Sarah's father was saying. Sarah was radiant in her white dress, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. They looked happy. They looked perfect. They looked like they belonged in this world of country clubs and valet parking in a way I never would. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll give them that. David's voice shook slightly when he said his vows, and for a moment he looked like the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for all the days of my life," he said to Sarah. It was a good promise. I hoped he meant it. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," everyone applauded. I clapped too, even though my hands felt numb. The reception started with cocktails on the terrace. I stood near the edge of the crowd, holding a glass of white wine I didn't want, watching David and Sarah make their rounds. They moved from group to group like politicians, Sarah's hand resting on David's arm, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that comes from knowing everyone is watching you and approving of what they see. They stopped to talk to Sarah's grandmother, a tiny woman dripping with diamonds. They spent 10 minutes with David's law firm partners, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear. They posed for photos with Sarah's sorority sisters, with David's college roommates, with what seemed like every person in the room except me. I waited. I stood there with my wine and my new dress and my carefully styled hair, and I waited for my son to come to me, to introduce me to his new wife's family, to take a photo with his mother, to acknowledge, in some small way, that I existed. But as the cocktail hour stretched on, I realized something that made my chest tight. I was invisible, not ignored, which would imply intent, but truly invisible. People's eyes slid past me like I was part of the furniture. Conversations flowed around me without anyone thinking to include me. I was the mother of the groom, and I might as well have been a ghost. When they finally called us in for dinner, I watched as families reunited at their tables, as friends embraced and caught up on old times, as the room filled with laughter and chatter, At table 12, the woman with the hip replacement was now discussing her gallbladder surgery in graphic detail while the elderly couple nodded politely and picked at their salads. The servers began bringing out the first course, a delicate soup with herbs floating on top that probably had a French name I couldn't pronounce. I watched them work their way through the room systematically. Head table first, then family tables, then friends, then colleagues. The soup was still steaming when it reached the first 6 tables. By the time they got to table 8, it was lukewarm. When they finally made it to table 12, my soup was completely cold. "Sorry about the wait," mumbled the young server, barely looking at me as he set down the bowl. I stared at the congealed soup and felt something crack inside my chest. This was how my son's wedding day was going to be? Cold soup at the back table while everyone else enjoyed their hot meal? But I told myself it was fine. The main course would be better. They'd work faster. It was just soup. I was wrong. The same thing happened with the salad, with the bread, with the main course. By the time my plate of chicken and vegetables reached me, everyone else in the room was nearly finished eating. The chicken was lukewarm, the vegetables had lost their color, and the sauce had started to congeal around the edges. I took a few polite bites and pushed the rest around my plate, trying to look like I was enjoying myself. But the worst part wasn't the cold food. The worst part was watching David and Sarah at the head table, laughing and talking with their wedding party, never once looking in my direction. The worst part was seeing Sarah's mother, Mrs. Bradford, holding court at table 2, surrounded by admiring relatives who hung on her every word about the exquisite flowers and the divine menu. The worst part was realizing that in a room full of 150 people celebrating my son's wedding, I was completely alone. When they brought out dessert, 3-tiered cake, and some kind of fancy chocolate mousse, I didn't even pretend to be surprised anymore. By the time it reached table 12, the ice cream had melted and the cake had absorbed the moisture, turning into a soggy, unappealing mess. I ate it anyway. Because what else was I going to do? That's when David appeared at my table, Sarah on his arm, both of them glowing with wine and happiness and the kind of confidence that comes from being the center of attention all day. "Mom," David said, leaning down to give me a quick hug that smelled like expensive cologne and champagne. "How are you enjoying the reception?" I looked up at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I'd sacrificed everything for, and tried to find the words to explain that I'd been eating cold leftovers while everyone else enjoyed a hot meal, that I'd been sitting alone while he worked the room, that I felt like a stranger at my own son's wedding. "It's lovely," I said instead. "Everything is beautiful." "Isn't it?" Sarah chimed in, her voice bright with champagne and satisfaction. "Mother Bradford really outdid herself with the planning." I nodded and smiled, because what else could I do? Create a scene? Embarrass my son on his wedding day? Demand better treatment like some kind of entitled mother-in-law? "Mom, you should try the chocolate mousse," David said, glancing at my plate. "It's incredible." I looked down at the melted, soupy mess on my plate. "I am trying it." David followed my gaze, and his expression shifted slightly. "Oh, that doesn't look right." "It's fine," I said quickly. It's fine." But David was already flagging down a server. "Excuse me, could we get a fresh dessert here? This one seems to have melted." The server, a different one from before, looked harried and slightly annoyed. "Sir, all the desserts are the same. They've been sitting out for the service." No, David insisted, and I could see that confident lawyer tone creeping into his voice. The desserts at the head table were perfect. This one is clearly old. The server glanced around nervously, clearly not wanting to argue with the groom. "I can check with the kitchen, but honestly, sir, we serve everything in order. The last tables always get the desserts that have been sitting the longest." And that's when David said it. He looked at the server, then at my plate of melted ice cream and soggy cake, and he laughed. Not a mean laugh, exactly, but the kind of laugh that says, "Isn't this amusing?" The kind of laugh that turns a moment of embarrassment into entertainment. "Don't worry about it," he told the server, waving his hand dismissively. Then he looked at me with a smile that was fond but patronizing, the way you might smile at an elderly relative who doesn't quite understand how things work anymore. "She's used to eating what life leaves behind," he said to Sarah, loud enough for everyone at my table to hear. "Aren't you, Mom?" The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, David didn't mean them to be cruel, but because they were true, and because my son had just announced to a table full of strangers that his mother was someone who accepted leftovers, who took what remained after everyone else had been served, who had spent her entire life eating what life left behind. Sarah laughed, a bright, tinkling sound. "Oh, David, you're terrible." The woman with the hip replacement chuckled. "That's what mothers do, isn't it? We make sure everyone else eats first." Even the confused elderly couple smiled and nodded, as if this was just a charming observation about maternal sacrifice rather than a casual dismissal of my dignity. Everyone laughed. Everyone found it amusing that the mother of the groom was sitting at the back table eating cold leftovers while everyone else enjoyed their hot meals. Everyone thought it was perfectly natural that I should be grateful for whatever scraps fell my way. Everyone laughed, and no one noticed when I quietly stood up, gathered my purse, and walked away. I moved through the reception like a ghost, invisible as I'd been all evening. Past the dancing couples, past the bar where David's college friends were ordering expensive whiskey, past the gift table piled high with elaborate packages wrapped in white and silver. No one called my name. No one asked where I was going. No one noticed that the mother of the groom was leaving her son's wedding reception. I walked through the country club's marble lobby, past the oil paintings of long-dead golf champions, past the fireplace where a few older guests were nursing after-dinner drinks and discussing their stock portfolios. I walked out the heavy glass doors into the cool October night, where valet attendants were smoking cigarettes and checking their phones. "Would you like your car, ma'am?" one of them asked politely. "Yes, please." I handed him my ticket, a small yellow slip that felt impossibly fragile in my shaking hands. As I waited for my 12-year-old Honda Civic to appear among the BMWs and Mercedes, I could hear music and laughter drifting from the ballroom windows. David and Sarah's reception would go on for hours. There would be more dancing, more toasts, more photographs. The cake would be cut with ceremony and fed to each other with giggles and mock protests. Sarah would throw her bouquet and some laughing bridesmaid would catch it. David would remove her garter while the groomsmen whooped and cheered, and none of it would include me. My car appeared, looking small and shabby next to the luxury vehicles surrounding it. I tipped the valet attendant and drove home through empty suburban streets, past houses where porch lights glowed warmly and families were settling in for the evening. When I pulled into my driveway, the house felt smaller than I remembered. Dark windows stared back at me like empty eyes. I sat in the car for a long moment, looking at the home I'd worked 3 jobs to buy, where I'd raised my son, where I'd spent 43 years building a life that suddenly felt insubstantial as smoke. Inside, the silence was complete. I walked through rooms that seemed foreign in the darkness, past furniture I'd saved for months to buy, past photographs of David at every stage of his life. First steps, first day of school, high school graduation, college graduation. In every picture, he was smiling. In most of them, I was too. In my bedroom, I carefully hung up my navy blue dress with the pearl buttons. It had cost more than I usually spent on clothes, but I'd wanted to look nice for my son's wedding. I'd wanted to be someone he could be proud of, someone who belonged in his new life. I sat on the edge of my bed in my slip and stockings, looking at my reflection in the mirror across the room. I looked older than I remembered, more fragile. The careful styling job Rosa had done on my hair was wilting, and my lipstick had worn off hours ago. I looked like exactly what I was, an aging woman who had spent her entire life giving everything to her child and had somehow expected that to matter. The wedding gifts I'd bought were still sitting on my kitchen table, wrapped in silver paper with white ribbon. A picture frame, yes, but also a hand-knitted baby blanket I'd been working on for months, hoping David and Sarah might want children soon. a cookbook filled with family recipes I'd written out by hand, a small wooden jewelry box that had belonged to my mother, passed down through generations of women who'd understood the value of having something beautiful to call your own. They seemed foolish now, these gifts chosen with such care. Sarah probably had jewelry boxes already, expensive ones that matched her bedroom set. She probably had cookbook collections and wouldn't be interested in my simple recipes for pot roast and apple pie. And the baby blanket, well, if children came, they'd be dressed in designer outfits bought by Sarah's mother, not wrapped in something their grandmother had made with her own hands. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, looking out the window at the neighborhood where I'd lived for 20 years. Mrs. Patterson next door had her television on. I could see the blue flicker through her curtains. The Morrison house across the street was dark, except for a single upstairs window where someone was probably reading in bed. Normal people living normal lives, probably not questioning whether their children loved them or wondering if their entire existence had been a waste of time. My phone sat silent on the counter. No calls, no texts, no messages asking where I'd gone or if I was all right. David was probably too busy with his wedding reception to notice I'd left. Sarah was probably relieved not to have the awkward mother-in-law hovering around, making conversation with her sophisticated friends. By now, they were probably cutting the cake and making toasts and dancing to songs I wouldn't recognize. By now, they had probably forgotten I existed. I sat in my kitchen until nearly midnight, drinking tea that had long since gone cold, watching my neighbors' houses go dark one by one. When I finally went to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening in my mind. The cold soup, the melted dessert, the laughter that followed David's casual dismissal of my dignity. She's used to eating what life leaves behind. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I wondered if he was right. I wondered if I had spent so many years accepting whatever scraps were offered that I'd forgotten I deserved better. I wondered if I'd taught my son, through 43 years of selfless sacrifice, that his mother was someone whose needs came last, whose comfort was optional, whose presence was easily forgotten. I wondered if this was who I'd become, someone who ate what life left behind. But as sleep finally took me, something else was stirring in the darkness of my mind, a small, hard seed of understanding that would, by morning, begin to grow into something else entirely, something that would make my son's hands shake when he read my email. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through my bedroom curtains and the sound of Mrs. Patterson's dog barking next door. For a moment, I forgot where I was, forgot what had happened. Then the memories came flooding back. The cold leftovers, the laughter, David's casual dismissal of my dignity in front of strangers. I lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling and feeling something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger exactly. It wasn't even hurt, though that was certainly there. It was something deeper, quieter, a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. When I finally got up, I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, an old thing David had given me 3 Christmases ago when he decided I needed to get with the times. I'd mostly used it for email and looking up recipes, but this morning I found myself opening my banking website with a purpose I'd never had before. The numbers on the screen told a story I'd never really examined closely. My checking account, my savings account, my retirement funds, modest by some standards, but substantial for a woman who'd worked multiple jobs her entire adult life. The house was paid off, had been for 6 years now. The life insurance policy I'd maintained religiously, with David as the sole beneficiary, had a payout of $150,000. But it was the other accounts that really caught my attention. The college fund I'd started when David was born, which I'd continued contributing to even after he graduated, thinking it might help with graduate school or a house down payment. The investment account my financial advisor had helped me set up 5 years ago. The savings account I'd labeled David's Future, that contained money I'd been setting aside for his wedding, his first house, his children's education. All of it meant for him. All of it saved through years of eating generic cereal and wearing secondhand clothes and taking the bus instead of paying for parking downtown. All of it accumulated through countless small sacrifices that David had never known about and apparently never wondered about. I made another cup of coffee and opened a new browser tab. For the first time in my life, I started researching something just for me. Not for David, not for his future, not for anyone else. Just for Margaret Wilson. Beach towns in Florida, mountain cabins in North Carolina, desert communities in Arizona where the sun shone 300 days a year and nobody knew your name or your history. I clicked through real estate listings, imagining myself in these places. A small condo with a view of the ocean, a cottage with a garden where I could grow vegetables, a place where I could be someone other than David's mother or the woman who eats what life leaves behind. The phone rang just after noon. David's name appeared on the caller ID, and for a moment my heart jumped the way it always did when my son called. Then I remembered last night, and I let it ring. He left a voicemail. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to check in. You left pretty early last night. Sarah's mom was asking about you. Hope you had a good time. We're flying out to Hawaii this afternoon for the honeymoon. I'll call you when we get back. Love you." No mention of the cold food or the humiliating moment at my table. No acknowledgement that anything had been wrong. In David's mind, apparently, everything had gone perfectly. His mother had played her assigned role, grateful recipient of whatever scraps were offered, and now he could move on to the next chapter of his life without giving her another thought. I deleted the voicemail and went back to my computer. That afternoon, I drove downtown to see Margaret Chen, my financial advisor. Margaret was a serious woman in her 40s who had never once asked me why I was saving so much money or what I planned to do with it. She simply helped me invest it wisely and sent me quarterly reports that showed steady, if modest, growth. "Mrs. Wilson," she said, shaking my hand firmly, "good to see you. What can I help you with today?" "I want to understand exactly what I have," I said, "and I want to know what my options are for accessing it." For the next hour, Margaret walked me through every account, every investment, every asset I owned. The final number was larger than I'd realized, not wealthy by David's new standards, perhaps, but enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life without depending on anyone. "Are you thinking about retirement planning?" Margaret asked. "Or perhaps you're considering a major purchase?" "I'm considering a major change," I said. "I'm thinking about selling my house and moving somewhere new." Margaret nodded as if this was a perfectly reasonable thing for a 67-year-old woman to announce out of nowhere. "Where were you thinking of relocating?" "I'm not sure yet. Somewhere warm. Somewhere different." "Well, the housing market is quite good right now. Your home has appreciated significantly since you purchased it. Based on recent sales in your neighborhood, I'd estimate you could get at least $180,000 for it, possibly more." $180,000. Plus my savings, plus my retirement funds, plus the investments I'd been building for David's future. It was enough for a new life in a new place. It was enough for freedom. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and began making lists. Things to keep, things to donate, things to sell. I moved through my house room by room, mentally cataloging 43 years of accumulation. Most of it could go. The furniture David had no interest in, the books Sarah would consider outdated, the kitchen gadgets and craft supplies and photograph albums that would mean nothing to anyone but me. I paused in David's old bedroom, which I'd kept exactly as he left it when he moved out for college. His high school trophies still lined the shelves, his baseball posters still covered the walls. The desk where he'd done homework every night still held his old computer and the lamp I'd bought to make sure he had good light for studying. It was a shrine to a childhood he'd outgrown and a relationship that apparently no longer existed. Time to let it go. By Sunday, I had a plan. Not a complete plan, but the beginning of one. I would sell the house, liquidate my investments, and relocate somewhere David couldn't find me unless I wanted him to. I would stop being the woman who ate what life left behind and become someone new, someone who chose her own meals, her own schedule, her own life. But first, there were things to undo, commitments to cancel, expectations to manage, safety nets to remove. Monday morning, I called my insurance agent and changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy from David to the American Cancer Society. Tuesday, I closed the college fund and the account labeled David's Future, transferring the money to my retirement savings. Wednesday, I visited my lawyer and updated my will, leaving my possessions to various charities and establishing a small scholarship fund for single mothers attending community college. Each task felt like removing a weight I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten it was there. Each signature, each phone call, each legal document was another step away from the woman who had lived her entire life for someone else's benefit. Thursday, I called 3 real estate agents and scheduled appointments to discuss listing my house. Friday, I visited the bank and arranged to have my monthly automatic transfer to David's savings account. Money I'd been depositing for years, just in case he needed it, permanently stopped. Through all of this, my phone remained silent. David was presumably enjoying his honeymoon in Hawaii, posting pictures on social media that I could see but couldn't bring myself to like. Photos of beautiful beaches and romantic dinners and sunset walks with his new wife. No mention of his mother, no thoughts about the woman who had made his perfect life possible. And that was fine. That was exactly what I'd expected. It was Sunday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the wedding, when I finally sat down to write the email. I'd been thinking about what to say for days, crafting sentences in my mind while I sorted through closets and packed books into boxes. I wanted to be clear, but not cruel, direct, but not dramatic. I wanted to explain my decision without asking for permission or understanding. I wanted to tell the truth. I opened my laptop and began to type, "Dear David, I hope you and Sarah are having a wonderful honeymoon. Hawaii looks beautiful in your photos. I'm writing to let you know about some changes I'm making in my life. After careful consideration, I've decided to sell the house and relocate to a different state. I haven't chosen exactly where yet, but I'm looking at several options in warmer climates. Along with this move, I'm making some financial adjustments that I wanted you to be aware of. The life insurance policy that named you as beneficiary has been changed. The payout will now go to the American Cancer Society. The college fund I maintained for your future educational expenses has been closed. The money has been transferred to my retirement accounts. The savings account I established for your general use has also been closed. This includes the monthly deposits I've been making since you started college. My will has been updated to reflect my new priorities. My estate will primarily benefit several educational charities that support single mothers and underprivileged children. I want to be clear that this decision is not made in anger or spite. It's simply time for me to live for myself rather than for others. For 67 years, I've been someone's daughter, someone's employee, someone's mother. I've eaten what life left behind, as you so eloquently put it at your wedding. I'm ready to try something different. I don't expect you to understand this choice, and I'm not asking for your approval. I'm simply informing you as a courtesy, the way you might inform a distant relative of a major life change. You have a beautiful wife, a successful career, and a bright future ahead of you. You don't need your mother's money or her sacrifice anymore. Perhaps you never did. I'll send you my new address once I'm settled. Until then, please don't try to contact me. I need this time to figure out who Margaret Wilson is when she's not defined by her relationship to you. I wish you and Sarah every happiness in your new life together. Margaret." I read the email 3 times before sending it, checking each word for accuracy and tone. It said exactly what I meant to say, nothing more and nothing less. No accusations, no demands for apology, no threats or ultimatums. Just the facts of my new reality, presented as calmly as I might announce a change in my phone number or mailing address. I hit send at 7:23 p.m. on Sunday evening, then closed my laptop and went to make dinner, real dinner, not leftovers. I cooked salmon with herbs and roasted vegetables, opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, and ate slowly while watching the sunset through my kitchen window. For the first time in a week, I felt hungry. For the first time in years, I felt free. My phone buzzed with a text message around 9 p.m. David's name appeared on the screen, but I didn't read it. I turned the phone face down and poured myself another glass of wine. Let him wait. Let him wonder. Let him feel, just for a few hours, what it was like to reach out to someone who wasn't immediately available, wasn't instantly responsive, wasn't waiting by the phone for his call. The next morning, there were 17 missed calls and 12 text messages on my phone. I deleted them all without reading them and took my coffee out to the back garden where the late roses were still blooming despite the October chill. Mrs. Patterson appeared at the fence that separated our yards, holding her own coffee mug and looking concerned. "Margaret, is everything all right? There was a young man pounding on your front door this morning around 6 a.m. He seemed quite upset." "That was my son," I said calmly. "And yes, everything is fine. Better than fine, actually." Mrs. Patterson studied my face with the keen eye of someone who'd been watching her neighbors for 40 years. "You look different," she said finally, lighter somehow. "I feel lighter," I admitted. "I'm selling the house, Helen, moving somewhere warm." "Good for you," she said, surprising me. "I've been wondering when you'd finally do something for yourself. That boy of yours has been taking advantage of your good nature for years." I stared at her. In all our years as neighbors, Helen Patterson had never once criticized David or offered anything but polite pleasantries about my family life. "You knew? Honey, the whole neighborhood knew. We've watched you work yourself to the bone for that child, and we've watched him take it all for granted. Some of us have been wondering when you'd finally wake up." Her words should have embarrassed me, but instead they felt like validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being overly sensitive. Other people had seen what I'd been too close to recognize. "The realtor is coming this afternoon," I said. "I should have the house on the market by the end of the week." "Where are you thinking of going?" "Florida, maybe, or Arizona. Somewhere I can have a garden year-round and never worry about heating bills." Helen smiled. "Send me a postcard when you get settled. I'll miss having a sensible neighbor, but I'm proud of you for choosing yourself for once." I spent the morning continuing to pack, sorting through decades of accumulation with a ruthlessness that surprised me. Clothes I hadn't worn in years went into donation bags. Books I'd never read again found their way into boxes for the library sale. Kitchen gadgets I'd bought but rarely used joined the growing pile of items headed for Goodwill. With each box I filled, with each bag I loaded into my car for donation runs, I felt pounds lighter. Not just physically, but emotionally. These possessions had been anchors, tying me to a life and an identity I no longer wanted to maintain. The realtor arrived at 2 p.m. sharp. Linda Morrison was the efficient woman in her 50s who walked through my house with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen it all. She took notes, measured rooms, and asked practical questions about recent improvements and neighborhood amenities. "It's a good, solid house," she said when we finished the tour. "Well-maintained, nice neighborhood, good bones. I think we can list it at $185,000 and expect some competition. The market's hot right now for homes in this price range." "How quickly do you think it will sell?" "In this market? With the right pricing and staging? I'd expect an offer within 2 weeks, maybe sooner." 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I could be free of this house, this neighborhood, this life I'd built around someone who didn't appreciate it. "Let's do it," I said. That evening, as Linda's assistant arrived to place the "For Sale" sign in my front yard, my phone rang again. David's name appeared on the screen, and this time I answered. "Mom?" His voice was strained, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. "Mom, what the hell's going on? I got your email, and I don't understand. We need to talk." "We are talking," I said calmly. "I mean really talk, face to face. I'm driving down there right now. I'd rather you didn't." "Too bad. I'm already on the highway. We're gonna figure this out." The line went dead. I looked at my phone for a moment, then went to the front window and watched as Linda's assistant hammered the real estate sign into my front lawn. The words, "For sale," were visible from the street now, announcing to the world that Margaret Wilson was moving on. David arrived 2 hours later, his BMW pulling into my driveway with the kind of aggressive speed that suggested panic. I watched from my living room window as he sat in his car for a moment, staring at the "for sale" sign as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. When he finally got out and walked to my front door, I could see through the peephole that he looked terrible. His hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt was wrinkled, and his face had the kind of pale, shocked expression you might see on someone who'd just witnessed an accident. He didn't knock. He used his key, the one I'd given him when he was 16 and had never asked for back. "Mom?" he called as he entered. "Mom, we need to talk about this insanity." I emerged from the kitchen, where I'd been calmly washing my dinner dishes. "Hello, David. How was your honeymoon?" He stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. "How was my— Mom, what is happening? Why is there a "for sale" sign in your yard? Why did you send me that email? Why aren't you answering your phone?" I explained everything in my email. Which part didn't you understand? All of it. He ran his hands through his hair, making it even more disheveled. "None of it makes sense. You can't just sell the house and disappear. This is your home. This is where I grew up." "Yes, it is. And now you're grown up and living your own life. You don't need this house anymore." "That's not the point. What about holidays? What about when Sarah and I have kids? Where are they supposed to visit their grandmother?" "I suppose that depends on where I decide to settle," I said, "and whether they're interested in visiting someone they've never met." David's face went even paler. "What do you mean? Someone they've never met? Of course they'll know you. You're their grandmother." "Am I?" I tilted my head, genuinely curious about his answer. "Based on what? Based on the fact that you'll tell them about me? Based on the assumption that you'll bring them to visit? When was the last time you visited me, David? And I don't mean stopping by for 20 minutes to pick up something you left behind. I mean actually visiting, spending time, having a conversation." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. We both knew the answer. "This is about the wedding," he said finally. "You're upset about something that happened at the wedding." "What happened at the wedding was a revelation, not a cause," I said. "It showed me something I'd been refusing to see for a long time." "What? What did it show you?" I looked at my son. This man I'd raised, this person I'd loved more than my own life, and felt nothing but a calm, clear sadness. "It showed me that you don't see me as a person," I said quietly. "You see me as a service, someone who exists to provide whatever you need, whenever you need it, and who should be grateful for whatever attention you can spare in return." That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you asked me how I was doing and actually listened to the answer? When was the last time you called just to talk, not because you needed something? When was the last time you included me in your life rather than just informing me about it? David's hands were shaking now. I could see it clearly as he gripped the back of my sofa, his knuckles white with tension. "I don't understand," he said, and for a moment he sounded like the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I thought we had a good relationship." "We had a functional relationship," I corrected. "You functioned as the child who took everything I offered, and I functioned as the mother who offered everything I had. But that's not the same thing as having a good relationship." But you're my mother." "Yes, I am. And for 43 years, that's been my entire identity. I've been David's mother, David's supporter, David's safety net. I've never been Margaret Wilson, person in her own right, with her own dreams and desires and needs." "What dreams?" he asked, and I could hear genuine confusion in his voice. "What needs? You have everything you need." And there it was, the proof of everything I'd been trying to explain. In David's mind, his mother was a person who needed nothing beyond the opportunity to serve him. A person without desires or ambitions or hopes that didn't center on his well-being. I need to matter, I said simply. I need to be seen. I need to be valued for who I am, not just for what I can provide. And I need to find out who I am when I'm not defined by my relationship to you. David's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought he might cry. But you do matter. You matter to me. As what? As a bank account? As a backup plan? As someone to call when you need sympathy or advice or financial help? As my mother. And what does that mean to you, David? Really? What does being your mother mean beyond being available whenever you need something? He stood there in my living room, surrounded by boxes of my possessions, staring at me as if I was speaking a foreign language. And maybe I was. Maybe the language of self-respect and personal worth was foreign to both of us. I love you, he said finally, his voice small and lost. I know you do, I said gently. And I love you too, but love isn't enough anymore. I need respect. I need consideration. I need to be treated like a person whose feelings and dignity matter. I do treat you that way. David, I said quietly, at your wedding, you told a room full of strangers that your mother was used to eating what life left behind, and you laughed when you said it. His face went white. I didn't mean anything by that. It was just a joke. I know. That's what made it so devastating. It wasn't meant to be cruel. It was just true. And everyone knew it was true. Everyone laughed because they recognized the accuracy of the statement. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't think... No, I agreed. You didn't think. You didn't think about how those words would feel. You didn't think about what it meant to seat your mother at the back table and serve her cold food. You didn't think about me at all. David was crying now, tears streaming down his face as he finally understood what he'd lost. Not just the house, not just the money, not just the safety net he'd taken for granted. He'd lost his mother's willingness to accept whatever scraps of attention and affection he felt like offering. Please, he whispered, please don't do this. We can fix it. I can do better. I'm sure you could, I said, but I'm tired of waiting for you to decide I'm worth treating well. I'm 67 years old, David. I don't have time to teach a grown man how to respect his mother. But where will you go? What will you do? You don't know anyone anywhere else. I'll figure it out. I'm smarter and stronger than you've ever given me credit for. I raised a successful man entirely on my own, built a career, bought a house, managed my finances. I think I can handle making some new friends and finding my way around a new town. David stood there for a long moment, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. The boxes labeled donate and sell, the bare walls where family photographs used to hang, the absence of all the small touches that had made this house a home for 4 decades. When? He asked quietly. I'm hoping to close on the house sale within the month. I'll probably rent something temporary while I look for a permanent place. And you won't tell me where? Not immediately. I need time to figure out who I am without you. Maybe someday, when I've done that, we can try to build a different kind of relationship, one between 2 adults who respect each other. But for now, I need space. He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, I said gently. You did, but not maliciously. You just never learned to see me as a whole person, and I never taught you to because I was too busy being whatever you needed me to be. I could learn now? Maybe, but I'm not going to wait around to find out. I've waited long enough. David walked to the front door, then turned back one more time. I really do love you, Mom. I know, sweetheart, I love you too, but I love myself now too, and that changes everything. After he left, I sat in my living room surrounded by boxes and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness exactly, but a deep, quiet satisfaction that came from finally choosing myself. My phone rang an hour later. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then deleted the message without listening to it. Whatever she had to say could wait, forever, if necessary. I had packing to finish, a new life to plan, and 43 years of habit to undo. For the first time in my adult life, I was going to eat first and share what was left over, if anything remained. For the first time in my life, I was going to stop eating what life left behind and start choosing my own meals. The next morning, I woke up to find my for sale sign had been moved. Instead of standing straight and proud in my front yard, it was lying flat on the ground, as if someone had tried to hide it or make it disappear. I walked outside in my bathrobe and set it upright again, making sure it was visible from the street. Then I went inside, made coffee, and started planning my escape.